Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Centimetre Perfect AFL podcast. We have completed the 2 weeks of the trade period, of which about 8 minutes of those have any consequence whatsoever. And as a result, we have so much to talk about because so many players called 1-300 move across the country, put all their stuff into nice boxes, unless you're Ivan Solder, in which case you took to Instagram. Liam, we've got so much to go through today. So many trades, so many rumours. The players that did move, the players that didn't move. All the threats to go to the preseason draft. The only person you're going to see in the preseason draft this year is probably me, because none of these players are going there, which is a bit of a shame because that would have been quite entertaining.
It would have been quite entertaining, and there's definitely some standouts in terms of the draft picks and how it's all shaped up after the trade period. Jesse, it feels like just a year ago and also yesterday that the Brisbane Lions won the grand final. I can't believe we're at the end of trade period already. What has happened in the last couple of weeks outside of trades, we are not going to talk about that today. Today is trades only. That's all we're talking about. Just the trades.
Well, if we're just talking about the trades, should we do nothing for the first 40 minutes of this podcast and then just fly through in the last 5? In the true spirit of trade year, whatever it is nowadays.
Trade spirit, trade tradition, you know, we'll throw a few things at the front, like the obvious ones, and then we'll just stop talking for about 20 to 30 minutes, and then we'll come at the end with an absolute rush, and we'll throw and rattle off all the names. No, Jesse, whilst that would be very meta and very beautiful, we're not going to do it. We're going to just do it by the books, by the alphabet, top to bottom. I'll go through and I'll read the ins, the outs, the picks, how they sit for the draft order after the trade period, and then Jesse will give his analysis, and I will chime in when I feel like I know what I am talking about. Jesse, does that sound good to you?
That sounds amicable.
Well, before we do that, Jesse, business. Take it away.
You can find us at CMPerfect_AFL on YouTube and Instagram, and Centimetre Perfect and AFL podcast on your preferred podcasting platform, unless your preferred podcasting platform is listening to me shout into open air, in which case you just need to open your ears and listen a bit closer. But yeah, YouTube is the place to be, Liam, in the coming months. We've got some exciting content coming up, rolling off the production line at the moment.
We do indeed. We've drafted a few things. We've started to record a few different bits and bobs. We're going to start editing them soon. I'm excited for it, Jesse. I know you're pretty pumped for it too. So hopefully in due time, we'll get a few of those videos out for you guys to watch, and hopefully you enjoy them. Obviously, give us some feedback via comments, via likes, via subscribes, as per the usual. So, Jesse, let's do it. Let's get into the trades, see who went where, starting with the Adelaide Crows. Players coming in: Isaac Cumming, Alex Neil-Bullen, and James Peatling. Leaving the Crow's Nest is Elliot Himmelberg, and going into the draft with just 2 picks, 4 and 64, one at the front or one at the back. Jesse, how did you find Adelaide's trade period? How'd they do?
Well, you forgot pick 82 for starters, so we're not exactly flying here.
Well, I actually got the list order from the AFL's website directly after the trade period. So I am going with that, unless they've updated it in the 15 minutes between me finishing the list and this.
Yep.
I just finished it. All right, one second. All right, well.
I told you there's only 5 minutes of relevance, but I'm happy to talk about Adelaide while you go through and QA check your own work.
Thank you.
I consider this to be a net win for Adelaide across the entire period. They've kept pick 4. That really should be Sid Draper, South Australian boy. He killed it in seniors when he got his chance in the SNAFL. He's looked like the consensus best outside of Victoria talent. And I'm not counting academy players in there because they're off limits, but he's looked like the best out of Victoria talent for most of the way through. I think he ends up at Adelaide. So unless there's a surprise higher in the draft order, I think that's potentially their biggest win out of this. Neil-Bullen will provide a bit of X factor. He started to have a bit of breakout at Melbourne in season 2024. So potentially in a new system, more attacking style of football under Matty Nicks when they're going, potentially could bring out some more in him. Coming at Peatling, I think they're both wins. Peatling, I'm a bit 50-50 on, and that's probably why it took so long. I think everyone's a bit 50-50 on James Peatling, but I think Cummings is an underrated player and a good pickup. So not sure we're going to see pretenders to contenders within months out of this trade period for Adelaide, but a step in the right direction for me.
Fair enough. Now, back on the draft order, the AFL draft on the website, I'm not too sure what website you're on, but it only goes to 78 on the AFL website on mine. So if I stop and there's any picks after that, Jesse, just tack them on the end for us, why don't you? Good lad.
Now,
Good
of
lad.
course, you forget that pick 85, 83, and 81 is worth about pick 1 and pick 7 when bartered for academy concessions. So don't you leave out the 80s, Liam. The 80s are the reason that we can't have Levi Ashcroft. Don't you ever forget that.
I
Because
won't.
that's how
I promise I
numbers
won't.
work.
Well, moving on. Look, to Brisbane. Brisbane is next off the ranks in nobody, from what I can tell, Jesse. They got nobody in. Out Harriet Sharp. They've got a swath of picks to go through, quite mid to late, but we'll see how they go. 27, 34, 42, 43, 49, 60, and the Powerball number 66. Jesse, your thoughts on this relatively pick-heavy trade period for the Brisbane Lions?
They secured Ashcroft. They've arguably won the trade period. You struggle to find in a super draft where everyone was desperate to scramble. Brisbane had the luxury of saying, "Oh, we actually don't need to scramble. They'll have to deal with us eventually. So bring on down those picks that no one else really wants because they don't have the chance to secure another generational talent." To be clear, this isn't a whinge about the system. I think it's actually quite nice that they have father, sons, and academies. I think that's a big win for outside of Victoria clubs to both have two incredible father-son prospects from the same father in 3 years. That's brilliant and arguably unheard of outside of Victorian clubs. Obviously, you've got the Dacos brothers at Collingwood, but it doesn't really happen in terms of brothers. Both very good, both consensus top 5 draft picks. That's pretty special and very exciting for Brisbane. They lose Harry Sharp. Harry Sharp was a depth player. They have players coming back from long-term injuries outside of 2024 anyway, so I don't necessarily think that's going to send them down the ladder or down the pecking order of a finals contention. They'll get Sam Day as a delisted free agent. That will help cover some of the Danaher loss. That would be my only concern. In saying that, though, there wasn't exactly a lot available in that space this year, so you can only really deal with what's in front of you.
Fair share. Now, just quickly, as quick as you can and succinctly as you can, explain it to the layman like me who has no idea what's going on, why these picks are good for Levi. Do they have to have certain picks in order to use for Levi? How does that work?
Yeah, yes, is the gist of that. So there's a point system. So each draft pick is assigned a points value. If you want to take your father, son, or your academy player, you have to essentially pillage a certain number of points, sacrifice them to the gods of the AFL. They take away your picks, and look, you've got a new player. Look at him. Isn't he nice and potentially handsome? That's quite exciting for Brisbane. They'll get a good result out of that. But essentially the idea is you give up a little to get a lot. Now, is that going to make Andrew Bassett incredibly cross? Sure. But Andrew Bassett traded away pick 47. He could have bartered that for one of his imaginary father-son picks.
Very fair, very fair. Good. Thank you, Jesse. In but a minute, you explained the entire father-son rule to me, which is great.
Well, I think we can leak the fact we do have an explainer on the father-son rule planned as well as part of our content. So hopefully I can give you a bit more of an in-depth discussion around the father-son concept. But essentially, that's the gist. If you can't be bothered to come back in a month, and look, I get it. In a month time, it's Melbourne Cup time. So, I don't blame you personally. But if you can't be bothered, there you go. If you can be bothered, please come back and send me money.
Yes, indeed. We like money. All right, let's move on to the Carlton Blues in Nick Haynes out, Matt Kennedy, and picks 3, 38, 63, 68, 69, 72, and maybe one that's floating above that number.
Nothing above that number, but I assume that means Matt Owies was playing badminton in 2024.
Yes, he was.
Because he
was.
Okay.
He did, yeah.
So should we clarify that Matt Owies also left Carlton?
Matt Owies also left Carlton. I'm not too sure why I'm writing it into my notes now. It is too late. Matt Owies also left Carlton.
We get to talk about the good side of the pick 3 trade.
Okay.
Which is nice because it comes first. For a player that they didn't really want, and look, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think Owies is quite a good player. Although, and I was actually thinking about this on the way to work today. If I look at a player and can identify with them, that probably means the player isn't that good. I see a lot of my style of forward craft in Matt Owies.
Okay.
And that's probably not great. However,
when was the last time you played, Jesse? When was the last time you played forward pocket?
It's been a while. It's been a while. But I mean, there's a couple of list spots opening up all around the place, so you never know preseason draft. In all seriousness, though, he's a 30-goal a season small forward. That's pretty good. I can see why there were clubs interested in filling that need. Apparently, his salary demands were quite high, too high for Carlton to deem to be a fair number. So they looked to offload him. But I think that makes sense. You can work with that. All of a sudden, pick 3's on the table. That's a really high pick.
Yeah, it's huge.
That used to get you Chris Judd at a trade table. Now it gets you Matt Owies. Oh no. Oh dear.
So just to clarify, the Eagles gave up pick 3 for Matt Owies specifically.
Well, 12 and 14 is
Right.
part of the mega super trade with picks and people and players flying everywhere.
That's
They
right.
did give up 12, 14, and 73, as also with Matt Owies going out. Of course, they had that pick swap with Hawthorn earlier in the piece that set up this play. So it was all a bit chaotic, but Carlton now are very likely to end up with a gun Victoria midfielder out of the draft, someone that can finally replace the nothing void that they have next to Cripps in midfield at times. Because let's face it, Sam Walsh hasn't been able to be consistently healthy.
Yep.
Cher's been an underperformer and also perennially injured.
Yep.
Hewitt's been fine. He's been fine. He's been fine to good. Yep. I don't think he's been necessarily been a bust, but I don't think he's exactly lived up to maybe the hopes of some Carlton fans. And then you've obviously got Paddy Cripps, who is at this point a generational player.
Yeah.
If they can get a new mid and just blood him, get games into him. I don't know which one they'll take with pick 3. But that's one thing. They've also got the Camporelli twins as part of father-son. Hence 63, 68, 69, 72. So they're going to get the twins they wanted out of father-son. They've got pick 3 to take a top-tier prospect in now what is considered to be a even though we have one of those every 3 years. And they got rid of a player that they didn't want and didn't feel like they were happy to meet the wage demands for. Plus, they held on to Brody Kemp, who was trying to desperately kick and scream down the Princess Highway to St Kilda on the last day of the trade period. I think this is a big win for Carlton. Okay. Obviously, it depends on who they take with pick 3 and where said pick 3 slots into their team. But I think this is a big win. We talk about Carlton at times when in the context of trade periods, they're happy to go for the big fish. They haven't done that this time. I think they've played this really smart. They've realised that they've already got a pretty decent group of players in terms of right age profile. The talent's there. They've just re-signed the best defender in the competition. They've got the best forward in the competition, the best midfielder in the competition individually. You can afford to take a pick 3 of that. You don't need to get these guys help right now. The help should already be on your list. So I think this is a great trade period from Carlton. I think they're one of the biggest winners out of this trade period. Big tick from me.
Big tick for the Blues. Righto. Well, let's move on to the Collingwood Magpies. They're up next in Harry Perriman and Dan Houston. They got their man and out Joe Richards and John Noble. Who, by the way, John Noble, if you ever look on the Instagram, when they show the pictures of the done deals that they've got, his picture is fantastic. Go look at it. He looks like evil, an evil villain. It's very good. And then picks 52, 55, and 50.
Is he picking up side work at Movie World, is he?
He might be, actually. He might be. He's probably auditioning for it. It's like his headshot. You know those glamour shots they do for actors when they go in? He's just like, it's like
he's done it the Zoolander.
No, not the Zoolander. It's more, go look at it. It's hard. It's definitely not a Zoolander, though. It's definitely not a Zoolander. It's more of a mega mind, or whatever that's called, that movie. Where he's just like the evil.
Yeah, time for Megamind.
That's good. That's good. And then picks 52, 55, 58. All the 50s for the Pies. So you wouldn't expect them to be too heavy on draft day, getting a few bits and bobs, a few players in the background. Jesse, your thoughts on Collingwood's trade period?
Win now is the mentality of this trade period.
Okay.
They have no interest in drafting at all. They simply do not care. They want to cash in on Nick Dacos's prime. They want to keep their elite level players going into that prime stage for a couple of seasons. So you're talking your Josh Dacos, your Darcy Moore, these type of players. Dan Houston and Harry Perriman are big ins. Perriman will really help, I think, Collingwood's structure, especially laterally, being a bigger player, something they've desperately needed for a while. Houston is, I think, really going to help. He'll basically take Jack Crisp's role because Jack Crisp is kind of slowing down. That's perfect. That's a perfect result. Houston has been underrated all season by the Victorian media, saying, "Oh yeah, Dan Houston, wouldn't he be cool?" No, he's a gun player. He is a gun player, and this is a great get from Collingwood. They've given up 2 players they didn't really want. The question is now, though, they've bet on themselves to win in 2025. They have essentially put their chips in. Have they quite timed it, though?
Okay.
That's probably the question, because I think there's a few clubs. Admittedly, I think there's a couple of clubs in that top 4 bracket this year that will go down. But I also think they're expecting sharp improvement out of a couple of others in that 5th to, well, we'll throw Collingwood instead down to about 11th bracket as well.
Mm-hmm. No, I think Collingwood is going to be, I think last year, or this year, I should say, bit of a blip. You'd be surprised if it doesn't come back around for them. But like you say, when you say too late, though, what do you mean? When they've left it too late, what do you mean?
I just think 24 was so there for the taking.
Mm.
And that's not to say that there's 17 other clubs ruining that as well at the same time. They probably are. But I just get the sense that if Collingwood were able to replicate what they did in 23, and I know injuries and everything got in the way, they would have won back to back. I think they have the better of Brisbane when both sides are healthy. Obviously, not taking anything away from Brisbane, they dominated it on grand final day, but it's fair to say this was an open season.
Yes.
So I just look at a couple of clubs on the rise, and I have a question mark as to, yes, they've improved in a couple of parts, but I still just am so concerned about that forward line. And like I said with Brisbane, it wasn't a great year for key forwards being on the open market. It's also not an incredible year key forwards-wise in the draft, as I understand it. So that does complicate things. So I'm not going to be too harsh on them for that, but I get the sense they've improved their best 23 on net gain, sure. But is that going to be enough to win now, given that's clearly what the draft hand says they're trying to do? I'm not sure.
Fair enough. We will find out next year, I am sure. Let's move on to the Essendon Bombers. I'm really nervous now that I've forgotten somebody, but Jesse, that's okay. You'll tell me if I'm wrong or if I've missed someone. In, nobody, out, Jake Stringer. Picks 28, 31, 40, 46, 53, 54, 65. It's kind of a bit of a so what kind of trade period for Essendon, isn't it?
It was quiet for the most part. Let's talk the good. They've clearly got the ducks in a row for Isaac Kako to join the club. Academy prospect. That's a big tick. They've wanted him for the whole season. They're going to get him. That's a win. They'll happily take that. That's the player they wanted draft-wise. That's the player they'll get. Stringer's an interesting one. Let's start with the good. They haven't overspent on a bad free agent this year, like they do every year. So that's a win. This Stringer's a really interesting one because obviously a 40-goal a season forward, assuming his name is Joe Smith, and we know nothing about him apart from that one fact that he's a 40-goal a season forward, is going to be worth more than pick 53. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
However, I don't think Stringer wants to be the Essendon Football Club, and there's obviously been those concerns with the AFL integrity unit investigation as well, which we won't go into now. But broadly speaking, I don't think he's a great culture fit at the Bombers, and it's certainly what Essendon is trying to achieve. So, on balance, there's been times where Fremantle have had to do the same, and I've said it was the right thing to do. I talk of Jesse Hogan there. I think the right call. GWS has seemed to have a really good track record with scallywags, although after this week. But, Hogan is now a Coleman medalist. So we've seen players have the ability that have been poor culture fits at other football clubs have that ability to turn it around. So potentially a steal. I think it's a low risk one for GWS. We'll have to step up a little bit in cap space, but for them it's low risk. For the Bombers, they clear some cap space. Yay. They get the next gen academy player they want. Double yay. And they probably accept the fact that it's not going to be a finals campaign in 25. Oh. But hey, there's a good chance to now rebuild for 26. Yay. So lots of mixed emotions, but Essendon, they didn't really do much. It's hard to really comment more than that.
I agree. I agree. Not that I've been able to comment on anything so far, Jesse, but I agree with that. Speaking of quiet action, our Freo Dockers, Jesse. Let's talk about our Freo Dockers. We got our man in Shai Bolton. He came in. We didn't lose anybody. No one left us. We have picks 14, 30, and 67. What do I miss? You've given me that look that I've missed something. Have I missed something?
No, you haven't missed anything. I was just wistfully glaring to Shai Bolton's eyes.
Well, we got him. There was a risk that we were going to take Baker as well and not have pick 14, but we didn't go down that path. Thankfully, we just got Shai. What do you reckon, Jesse? Our Freo Dockers, how do they do?
Where do you want me to start? Do you want me to start with Baker, Bolton, or the draft picks? Because I can talk about either first.
However it feels natural to you, Jesse. Start with Shai. Let's talk about Shai, just to throw it out there. I say do what you want and then take that back immediately. I think he's the guy we brought in. We wanted him. Let's talk about him, shall we?
Yeah. Fantastic result for the Fremantle Football Club. I understand Shai as Shay, as it actually should be pronounced, as per Ryan Daniels. Shai Bolton.
Okay.
Not shy, because apparently he's not shy, is how Ryan Daniels explained it, which is a nice, funny way of saying it. So thank you, Ryan. You educated me, and I still got it wrong. Shai Bolton is the type of player that, and I've said this analogy on this podcast before, he's the icing player when you have the cake. Mm-hmm. To me, Fremantle have the cake, or certainly enough of the cake that you can consider what colour and decorations and patterns you're going to put as your icing. For the record, purple, because it's Fremantle. Yes. He is that player. He's that icing you put on the cake when you're ready to go to MasterChef and say, Matt Preston, please give me $100,000 or whatever it is you give me on this television program that I don't think anybody actually watches. That's what you do. This is a great get for Fremantle. Mm. He fills a Sonny Walters-shaped hole in the forward setup. He can rotate through the midfield. He can add 30 goals a season, which, in the context of Fremantle's 2024, would be the difference between finals and no finals. You think about a player like Shai Bolton in the Essendon game. You think about a player like Shai Bolton in any of the close losses, Port Adelaide in GWS, Hawthorn down in Tassie. That level of dynamism changes. I know we have X-Factor players. I know Freddie's out there.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But Shai's different gravy. And I get the sense this year was a bit of a, I don't really want to be here anymore year for Richmond, which, look, is a danger with a player like Shai Bolton. He can be mercurial. But you've just got to back yourself sometimes as a football club to get it right. And I know that's not always been the case for Fremantle, but I think Shai Bolton was a non-negotiable out of this trade period, and we've got it. So that is, I'm doing this like a traffic light system. That's my green. Okay. Let's go to my orange. Now, it's not red because I know why they had to do it. To get Shai Bolton, they had to do the weird pick swap and give up everything they had for him in pick 14.
Yep.
Let's get one thing clear, though. Beau Allen is not Gary Ablett Jr. If I hear one more Fremantle fan moaning that we're not going to be drafting Beau Allen because we traded down and we need to package up everything to get above West Coast just to get Beau Allen, I fear for the safety of my mobile phone. Because I don't get it. Beau Allen is a very promising young player. He's going to be a top 20 draft pick. He's probably going to push top 10. Fremantle probably would have taken him if they had kept 10 or 11. That's fair enough. That's fine. Mm-hmm. But there is no need in this team for Beau Allen because Beau Allen will sit in the stands at Optus while 34-year-old Nat Fyfe plays his exact role, doing nothing, and he'll just sit there. So it's a waste of everyone's time. Mm-hmm. Johnson has that role. Erasmus is screaming for an opportunity to get some consistent time. O'Driscoll's shown he can play midfield minutes. I'm sure Beau Allen will be a very good player. It wouldn't surprise me if he went to West Coast and had good senior impact in season 2025 with the likes of Harley Reid running that midfield. I can absolutely see that happening. Mm-hmm. But we haven't traded out of getting Harley Reid here. That's not what we've done. Yeah. We've secured what this football club needs right now. Sure, Beau Allen would have been fine in the Johnson, Erasmus, and Miss draft a few years ago, but he's not a need right now. Yeah. What we needed to do was get Shai Bolton by any means necessary, and we did that. I'm fine with it. I don't know who we're going to go for now. I really, really hope it's a key defender because I think Pearce is gone the second Tasmania come in. and I'm worried about Cox. So I want to start thinking about a counter forward for Draper and having that as my backline.
Yeah.
Obviously, Cox has time to turn around. Obviously, Pearce is going to still be here for at least 2 years, 3 years, and he may not go to Tasmania. But I think he's got designs of being the first captain of the AFL club representing his home state, and I think that's fair enough. I wish he wasn't blabbing to the ABC about it as a contracted player years ahead of time, but he is, and that's fine. So that's what I would like. Now, I'm not Joe Brighty. I can tell you I'm not Joe Brighty because he was desperate to get Liam Baker, as was Justin Longmuir. And please explain in what planet Liam Baker is worth pick 11 to this Fremantle side. Liam, I'm going to actually throw this to you.
Okay.
What?
Yeah, no, I think we were both kind of worried. We were talking about it as the rumor mill started going on that that was being thrown around, like all three of those picks.
We offered it. We offered it. That was the offer made to the Richmond Football Club.
Yeah. And no, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, I think we were having a chat about it. You were telling me, like, what would be his role in this team? We already have several players who feel that need. And also pick 11 for Liam Baker. Like, he's good, but he's not pick 11 good. He's just not pick 11 good. And I understand what Richmond were doing. I know we offered it. Yeah, that's weird. That's throwing me for a loop, Jesse. If we offered them all three.
Pause and put it this way.
Okay.
Much like Collingwood before, this has broadly been a win-now trade period for Fremantle, which is absolutely fine, but there's a level to it. And when you're in win-now mode and you see your rivals picking up a Bailey Smith or a Tom Barras, even though you're picking up someone really good too, you look at the other clubs looking to build at the same time you are and say, oh no, we need best available. What do we not need? Draft picks. Don't care. Don't want them. Our contract situation is admittedly very good. And that's one thing I will praise the footy department for. But that Baker Bolton mega offer, to me, screamed too much into mistakes Fremantle have made in the past, which is best available at all costs. Baker didn't want to play for Fremantle. I truly do not believe for 1 second that Liam Baker had any serious interest in playing for Fremantle outside of, oh, look, it's near the Herdsman market, so I can still go and hang out with Harley sometimes. That's honestly as far as I think it went.
Yeah.
To me, that is a worry because there's very clearly going to be a Chad Warner sweepstakes next season between 3 clubs. If we had done that, no chance we would have got Warner. Because the way the pick swaps worked out with the eventual trade for pick 14, we wouldn't have had the future third that we now have. Alarming. One thing I will say on this topic before we move on, because I'm conscious there are other teams to talk about.
Yeah.
There's always been a relatively uneasy peace between Fremantle and West Coast when it comes to offering players deals when they want to return home to WA. Tim Kelly basically came unopposed from Fremantle, from Geelong with no opposition from Fremantle. I will make that clear. Luke Jackson was the same when he came to Fremantle with no opposition from West Coast. Fremantle being so aggressive for a player that A, nominated West Coast, that's where he wanted to play, and B, doesn't really fit the system anyway. I am concerned that it does disrupt the uneasy piece. And when you're the smaller of the 2 clubs, I'm not necessarily sure that's wise and well thought out. Because it hasn't really happened too much in recent years. And you may correct me if I'm wrong here, Lynn, if you can recall something. But generally it's been a case of Freo will get players X, Y, and Z. West Coast will get players A, B, C. We usually know by about April.
Yeah.
That didn't happen this year because Fremantle got really aggressive because they felt they could deal with Richmond. I just worry. Now, look, Chad Warner is probably going to be a free-for-all anyway because he is genuinely, or has the potential to be a top 10 player in the competition. That may be different. But if you want to lure another WA player, like, I know it's not going to happen because he signed a long-term deal, but if you wanted to lure Sammy Taylor back, another gun, and Sammy Taylor nominated Fremantle, but West Coast had the better draft hand and they could deal with GWS in an easier fashion, would they then remember the fact that we tried to shark Baker because we had a better platform to deal off? That's my worry.
I think at the end of the day, it's all business, right? And I think part of that business is that you don't want to take a player that that doesn't want to play for you. Why would you want that in the first place? And if that player
I'm not
nominates,
saying don't be competitive. I'm just saying play your cards right, and I don't think Fremantle did here.
Gotcha. Okay, we'll move on because it's a good conversation, though. Good conversation piece, but yeah, we'll see how it plays out. Oh, look, next year when Chad Warner's, who's the third team? You said there were 3 teams. Who's the third team?
Well, Sydney could always retain.
True, the one he plays for currently. Stupid thing. Crikey Moses. All right, let's move on. Geelong in Bailey Smith. They got their man as well. Lots of man getting this offseason. Out, nobody picks 45, 57, 75. Again, it seemed like Geelong had pretty much one track mind in this trade period. Obviously, a few other names were kind of dangled around. Did Jack Anthony end up coming in? No, he didn't. And obviously, Clayton Oliver didn't either.
Should have walked
Jesse. Who?
Smith.
Should have walked him.
It's so boring when the deals are done. Have some drama. It's boring.
So walked him as in what the Bulldogs are sacking. What do you mean?
No, as in Geelong should have walked him to the draft and picked him up for not pick 17.
Gotcha.
Now, yes, I know that makes everyone really cross, but there's my competitive side back after being so nice and WA friendly 2 minutes ago. Walk him, walk everyone. Richmond, walk Harley in 3 years when he's had enough. Do it. Tasmania, walk Harley even. No, look, in all seriousness, Geelong got their man. Geelong have improved their squad again. They haven't really lost. They haven't lost. I mean, they've lost a couple of veterans retirement-wise. Tommy Hawkins alive, but we've talked about their next man up approach before. This is a great get for them. They probably lacked that midfield megastar in season 2024. That was probably their one weaker point, if they had one. This is a great get. Bailey Smith is a fantastic player. I know he's polarizing. I get that. But at the end of the day, I think this is the right fit for Bailey Smith. I think this is the right fit for the Geelong Footy Club. We talk about clubs who are in win now mode. I mean, Geelong are forever in win now mode.
Yeah.
They'll probably draft the next Brownlow medalist with that pick 75.
Yeah. They are ridiculous.
Probably from like the Dumble Young Demons or something out of the Upper Great Southern Footy League. Just, yep, you'll do. Yeah. And then all of a sudden he's won 8 Brownlow medals in a row. But also no All Australians because voting. A great trade period for Geelong in terms of getting what they wanted. They didn't give up really anything of consequence. I mean, they gave up pick 17. I think they're fine with that. Don't think they're going to complain too much for what they got in return. They should be top 4 next year if this season was anything to go by.
Yep, correct. Agree. We'll move on to someone who was quite active in the trade period, the Gold Coast Suns. Elliot Himmelberg, John Noble, and Daniel Rioli in, out Jack Lukosius and Rory Atkins, and picks 39, 41, 51, 61, 70, 76, and 78. All later round picks for the Gold Coast Suns. Jesse.
What a weird trade period. On one hand, yes, let's laugh at Gold Coast giving up pick 6 for Dan Rioli. That is objectively quite funny. Mm-hmm. On the other hand,
they're good at that though. They're good at that. What did they give a Lockie Weller? Gave us pick 5 for Lockie Weller, right?
They have Sandy Brayshaw.
They gave Sandy Brayshaw. Whoopsie daisy. Yeah, go on.
Oops. Well, I suppose they've won the same amount of premierships, so it doesn't really matter.
Shit.
There's method to this madness from Gold Coast. And for the first time, I look at their trade period and think, oh no, they gave up a high draft pick. But I can see why they did it. Not even for the player. They are very clearly betting on their 2025 Academy Hall. They are all in on their Academy Hall. They are desperate to make sure they can go into 2025, get Zeke Uland, build around him. That's fine. They have the cap space to absorb a player like Dan Rioli. Do I think they should have given up pick 6 for him? Not particularly. Do I necessarily think Himmelberg and Noble are going to help them go from 14th to 2nd? No. The problem I have with this trade period for Gold Coast is, and it's a problem I've got with a couple of teams that we'll talk about later on, they've arguably improved their best. Well, they have improved their best 23. Daniel Rioli is going to be an improvement in their best 23. Mm-hmm. However, it's an improvement that probably holistically takes them from 14th to 12th. Because I would have bet on Anderson and Flanders improving production wise in that midfield. Yes, you throw in Real. They could, and Raul as well. They could be an unplayable midfield. But if they haven't figured out their forward line, they haven't figured out how to leave the Gold Coast Shire's regional borders,
Mm.
they're still gonna be bad or still gonna be below average.
Mm.
So yes, on one hand they have very clearly they've bet on players who want to be at the club, which is a positive in that regard. So there is ticks there. I'm just not sure the price was quite right.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, let's move on to the GWS Giants. We have in the aforementioned Jake Strigger, out Nick Haynes, Isaac Cumming, and James Peatling. And they have picks 15, 16, 21, 37, 56, and 74 coming into the draft. Again, I think I said this is like, well, I did say that like GWS are they the feeder team for everybody else, but they didn't lose as many as I was expecting, so that's good, I suppose.
It's still a problem though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
These guys are 4 players within that kind of best 26 clump at the Giants. That's a problem. None of them are game changers. None of them are mega stars, but they've whittled away at their core. So they're a side I'm a little bit 50-50 on in season 2025, especially after their finals campaign. So concerns. Stringer, I mean, is a bargain. P53 for a $40 season forward is a bargain.
It's good value.
If they can turn him around, they can have a very, very scary forward line moving forward. Just not sure if that's going to offset some of the losses, I think, defensively. Guys like Cumming, Haynes, even Peatling can be so integral to the way they try to move that ball. If they lose some of that identity, that could be a problem.
Moving on to the Hawthorn Hawks. A couple of big ins for the Hawks. Josh Battle and Tom Barras both in. Nobody leaving, because why would you want to leave? Fun, Hawthorn, fun. And picks 33, 71, and 77 going into the draft. Well, again, 2 very massive ins for the Hawks. And kind of like Geelong, I can see why nobody would like want to leave. Not that it's always their choice, but you know what I mean. Like, why would you want to get out of Hawthorn at the moment? Even if you were kind of that player who's just on the cusp, I think you'd like to stay around just to see what happens next year and moving forward. But Jesse, what are your thoughts on the Hawthorn Hawks trade period?
Would you have said 12 months ago Hawks would be in win now mode?
No, they have absolutely fast forwarded that to the absolute end of the earth. It's going to what can we do? We can do all sorts. Let's get on it.
They are very keen to win now. They have they've got no draft hand this year. They've got Carlton's first rounder next year, and that's it. That might be good. It might be absolute garbage. They have very clearly said enough is enough. No drafting. We've got the players that we want. Let's go and try to win a flag. Obviously, quite risky. But they haven't really done the whole high draft pick thing. Hawthorn, not since the days of getting Buddy Franklin, Luke Hodge, etc. They have preferred to bring in known quantities. So I guess it's just continuity in terms of what they know. So I think it's a good period for them. They've got 2 of the best defenders in the competition. It allows Sicily now to play forward more. That helps out a need down at that end of the ground. I think this is a win, Liam. I think they've done quite well here.
Yeah, I think so. I think they're on a very good path. I mean, you saw it this year. I think they're on a very good path. The Hawks, and yeah, this trade period definitely shows that for sure. Let's move on to a curious one. Let's move on to the Melbourne Demons. So they brought in Tom Campbell and Harry Sharp. They lost Alex Neil-Bullen. They go into the draft with picks 5 and 9. They offloaded essentially their entire draft order in this trade period, it seems. 28, 40, 46, 49, 54, 65. All obviously higher draft picks, but they offloaded a lot to leave themselves with 2 obviously high picks. Interesting to me, Jesse. What are your thoughts?
That's a rebuild trade. And yet there's $1.3 million a season of Clayton Oliver still in their books. They had to dump him if they wanted to commit to this rebuild. I know it's harsh. I know that's going to make people quite cross, and it's a sensitive topic, and I understand that, and I'm not saying it to be callous. But Clayton Oliver is in the way of this football club rebuilding because he is so good, but he's also, I don't think, quite in it at the moment. You know, even if the talks of there's been a peace made between the club and his connections, if that's the case, that's fine. But there's now been 2 consecutive trade periods of trying to deal him. Deal him to Adelaide, deal him to Geelong, deal him to whoever's going to listen, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
That's a real rift. I know they probably don't need the salary space for season 2025. That's fine. But I think they could have used getting rid of him. Now, you would not have got equal value. I get that. But Melbourne aren't making finals in season 2025. I'm happy to call that now. There's not a chance Melbourne are making finals in 2025.
Mm.
So I guess that leads to the question then, what's the point?
Of what? Of pick 5 and 9?
That's good list management.
Yeah.
That's saying we kind of suck. It's time to build something around Petrarca that when he's telling out of his prime, he's got players coming in to support him. To me, Petrarca's the one you're building around, not Oliver.
Yes.
Gorn was good in season 2024. I don't know how long his production's going to sustain. They don't really have a forward line. Not a very reliable one, at least. They lost their biggest improver in Neil Bullen. I just don't know what the plan is with Melbourne, because part of them screaming rebuild, but part of them screaming we want to go again.
Mm-hmm. So they can't make up their minds. They're caught in the middle. They're caught between 2. But I see what you mean, that one piece of Clayton Oliver there, because, I mean, we'll talk about a team in just a second who's basically cleared house in order to, facilitate a rebuild. But if you've got that sort of Damocles hanging above your head, that is a massive contract. Hopefully they get him sorted out, Clayton. That is. Hopefully they get they can work out how to get him up and firing again. Sort out. Obviously he's okay. Obviously that's the main thing. He's a human being after all. Hopefully he's doing okay. But yeah, they're going to need to get something out of him this season for them to be competitive, let alone be even talking about finals. I would say I agree with you, and that's in that scenario, Jesse. I do. Let's move on, shall we? To the North Melbourne Kangaroos in Jack Darling, Caleb Daniel, Luke Parker, and Jacob Constanti. Who's that? And then out, nobody. Picks 2 and 62. Lots of players coming in. Lots of experience coming into the young Kangas, Jesse.
They've got the cap space. They gave up very little they gave up nothing for Darling. I think they gave up very little for Parker. They gave up a reasonable amount for Caleb Daniel. But what Caleb Daniel does is it unlocks McKercher going further forward towards being in front of the ball, or being at least at the ball rather than behind the ball. So essentially you've traded pick 25 to bring your second most exciting player into the game more. I think that's pretty good because Caleb Daniel is a good player.
Yes.
That's a win. Darling is much needed help for Larkey. I think Parker can add a bit of forward craft into the team as well. I think this is actually a really good trade period. They haven't traded that pick 2. That's a win. They were offered the conglomerate trade that West Coast eventually took. So they kept pick 2. They held firm. They'll draft another top-level prospect. I don't know if they need any more midfielders, but they're going to draft someone very good. Win-win for me. I think this is a good trade period for North. I think we'll start to see them inching up that ladder, potentially, even in that kind of, we'll say, 10th to 13th bracket coming into season 2025.
You call it what it's meant to be called, Jesse. It's a clump, God damn it. The 10th to 13th clump. Bracket. Well, look, I agree. Look, they got the experience that we were talking about through the season that they needed to balance out a lot of the young kids. I think Luke Parker's a really good old head to bring in as well, if for nothing else, just to be out there to guide and kind of be a bit of a general out there and lead the way. So no, I agree. Good pickup season for the Kangas. Pickup season. That's what the trade period should be called. It's pickup season. All right, let's move on to the Port Adelaide Power.
Kiss and drive.
What's that?
Kiss and drive.
Kiss and drive. That's right.
We drop them off for school and they come back wearing a Richmond gear and say, "Oh."
All right, Port Adelaide in Jack Lukosius, Joe Richards out. In Jack Lukosius, in Joe Richards, in Rory Atkins, out Dan Houston. Picks 13, 29, 36, and 50 on the table.
I don't want to join the Kane Corns nastiness here.
Okay.
But that's a great SNAFL premiership side the Port Adelaide have built themselves with Richards and Atkins. Because if they're playing senior footy, Port won't make finals.
Okay.
They're just not best 22. I doubt they will play very much, and I'll be quite alarmed if they are in their round one injury crisis aside. Lukosius, I like him. I think he's a very good player. Do I necessarily think he's a great fit for Port? Jury's out of it. I think they've got enough players, enough of those hybrid swingman players. Noting they do lose one in Dan Houston, but I think they've got enough hybrid types to not have needed him. I think Adelaide had a bigger need, but hey, he wants to play on a contender. Port should be in that top 8 bracket next year. That works for him. They got back into the draft in 2024. That's a win. They have gotten out of the draft in 2025. Maybe not the best decision because I don't know how much longer they can keep this, we'll say, excellent March to August, sleepy September cycle going.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, fair enough. We'll move on to the Richmond Tigers. In and nobody. This is the one I want to talk about. I'm intrigued by this one, Jesse.
Okay. This one's you want to hear what I have to say?
Of course I do, but before I do that, I have to tell you what they've got. They've got
just straight into my analysis.
All right, go. No, nobody.
They managed to get Dick Reynolds, 3-time Brownlow medalist. Welcome. What a great pickup. No, Led, tell us who they've gotten and what they've given up.
Well, they've got no one coming in. Out Jack Graham, Liam Baker, Shai Bolton, Daniel Rowley, and a bucket load of cap space. And then the picks is the entire first round of the draft. 1, 6, 10, 11, 18, 20, 23, and 24. I mean, this is the most rebuildiest of rebuild drafts or trade periods I've ever seen. And I don't even pay much attention to trade periods. Usually, it's the first time I've ever done it. But even I can tell that is strip everything bare, start again. And it's kind of exciting, I think. Like if you're a Richmond fan, you know what you're in for. You know you're in for a few years of building and seeing where everything lands. They're essentially going to be running out kids by the looks for next year, which is fine. Get them up, and before too long, you might have a Hawthorn. Who knows? But Jesse, what are your thoughts on the Tigers trade period?
What a fantastic trade period for Richmond. Mm-hmm. They got rid of everything they didn't want, cleared millions in cap space, like you alluded to, Liam, and have gifted themselves every chance to build a ferocious team in 3 years' time. Yes, Richmond are going to be awful in 2025. They could potentially be historically bad, looking at some of those players who are probably going to play 22 games for them next season. But they kept Noah Bolter. They logged Noah Bolter down while this was going on in the background. That's a win for them. They wanted him. They've kept him. They've gotten rid of all the players to free up that amount of money so that when these guys are rolling off their first rookie deals, they can try to keep them. Richmond are a big enough club that when they're going well again, free agents will come knocking. Players will want to play for the Richmond Footy Club when they're top 8, when they're contending. I think this is a great trade period. I think every Richmond fan knows what they're in for, or should at least have some idea of what they're in for. Mm-hmm. And I don't think you'd find many Richmond fans egregiously upset by the direction the footy club's taken. This is an excellent trade period.
I agree. And I was going to actually suggest we do like a best and worst. I didn't suggest it because I would have no idea what I'm talking about. But I would say, if I was to have gun to my head, I would say Richmond had the best one this season because I think that ticks all of their boxes. It sets them up nicely for the future. And sure, the future you don't really know. It's obviously a big old what if. But if you're going to give yourself a chance in this game, I think they've done a very, very good job of that. All right, let's move on to St Kilda. In Jack McRae, out Josh Battle and Tom Campbell. And they've got picks 7, 8, 32, and 47 to play with. Jesse, your thoughts on the St Kilda Saints?
McRae fills a need. I think they did pretty well to get him. I think that's been a good trade by the St Kilda Footy Club. They obviously lose Josh Battle. They get band 1 compensation for that. So they do go into that draft with a strong 7 and 8. This is a critical draft for St Kilda. They have got to get this right. They have to get these 2 picks spot on. Mm-hmm. If they don't, with some of these other teams building the way they have, if they get these half right or 3/4 right even, they're going to be in that 9th to 13th bracket for a long time. They have to execute in this draft.
Well, if history tells us anything, they'll pick who they pick at 7 and 8, and then whoever goes at 9 and 10 will be the superstars, right?
Well, hang on. It's Melbourne bookend them because they've got almost bookend them. So Melbourne will draft a Brownlow medalist and a Coleman medalist, and St Kilda will draft the local postman and probably Andrew
Hey,
Bassett because he's so upset that with father-son rules, he wants to play himself to try to even the odds.
hey, listen, that local postman's got a wicked barrel on him, so it's not a bad pickup if you ask me. Not a bad pickup at all. All right, much else to say about Saints?
They'll lose Tim Membry by the sound of things. That's odd because it's not like they have a megastar established forward who has no issues whatsoever with goal kicking or reliability or injury crises or mentality or anything like that.
Who's that?
Just I'm of course referring to Cooper Sharma. No, I'm referring to Max King. Just a weird one. I think a fine trade period, not a bad trade period. It's a fine trade period, but the whole adage of no one wants to come to St Kilda, I think, really rang through the halls of Moorabbin while all this was going on. Were they actually in for Dan Houston apart from being a Victorian side? I don't think they ever progressed beyond that. They have the cap space, so
Yeah, true. Intriguing. Although I think it doesn't matter. Let's move on. Move on to Sydney, who also had a pretty quiet trade period.
Sydney did less in the grand final than they did in this trade period.
There's nothing to talk about, really. In, nobody. Out, Luke Parker and Jacob Constanti, who we spoke about earlier. And they've got picks 19, 22, 44, and 59 to play with. Shall we move on?
Yep.
Yeah, cool.
They tried to hold firm for Parker. It didn't really work, but they get some cap space. I don't know what they're going to do in season 2025. They're very clearly going to get an incredible draft hand if Chad Warner does leave. So potentially just a case of trying to stay in and amongst it for one more year. But the two last clubs, Leo, I think there's a fair bit to talk about, certainly in the first of these two clubs. So we're pushing an hour, so we probably should try to punch through the relative level of
Let's
focus.
go. It's because you can't help but talk for 15 minutes about Fremantle, apparently. Crikey Moses. Let's go.
It was 7.
It was 7. It was timing.
Count.
Let's go to the West Coast Eagles first. In, Jack Graham, Liam Baker, and Matt Owies, who I did write for this one. And out, Jack Darling, Tom Barras. Picks 12, 26, and 73, which is an odd draft hand for a team down the bottom, if you ask me. Jesse, go.
I'm worried because what they've done is they've brought in players who could take them from 16th to 13th.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of Harley Reid and maybe Campbell Chesser, that's a very big mate. That's a stretch.
Mm-hmm.
Where is the improvement coming from on this list currently in terms of the current players that went into this trade period as West Coast Eagles players? Who's getting better? Allen's hit his peak. Could we see another Waterman? Could Jack Petrocelli win a Brownlow? Probably not. Where's this organic improvement going to come from? So what you've then done is you've brought in players who are in their prime age-wise, who aren't match winners, good players, like nothing wrong with Baker, nothing wrong with Owies, nothing wrong with Graham. They will be useful players at West Coast. But it's bringing in 3 more Jaden Hunts. These guys are fine. They're fine players. They'll be best 22, but they're not going to rock you up the ladder. This would have all been fine if they kept pick 3. And there's probably no negative connotations. And I don't need to be a fan of a rival club to think this is a bad trade period. Their fans will tell you that. Mm-hmm. I've never seen Don Pike more hated, except for all the other times I've seen Don Pike be hated in his AFL administrative career. He's been absolutely torn to shreds on social media for some of these dealings. The big blot on this, though, is what they actually got for Barras. The whole time, it was, give us 2 first-rounders, please and thank you. Come 10 minutes before the deadline closes, first, second, and third will be fine. That's not... 2 plus 3 doesn't equal 1. 3 minus 2 equals 1. But I don't know if that's what they thought they were doing and how numbers work. But that's not... No. Just a bit of a worry. If they'll probably take Bo Allen with pick 12 if he's available. That will be fine. But I don't know if everyone within the West Coast executive actually knows they're in a rebuild. Because it feels like everyone else seems to, but maybe not them.
Interesting. All right, let's finish up with the final team of the night. Western Bulldogs in, Matt Kennedy out, Caleb Daniel, Bailey Smith, Jack McRae. And pick 17, 25, 35, and 48 going into the draft. And you were interested by these guys as well, Jesse.
just because they don't actually lose. They don't really lose anything when you look at who played in 2024. McRae barely played. Smith didn't play. Daniel was in and out of the side. For me, the issue is they haven't gotten up the draft board with any significance. They got 17. That's new. Yay. So are they going to be able to sustain that top 8 push? Is there going to be improvement within this list? I'm not sure. Potentially they're starting to consider what a rebuild could look like, because they've also been pretty consistent for a decade now. Not as high as a Geelong or a Sydney or even a Port, but they've been broadly consistent in terms of pushing for top 8, top 4 flag contention. Mm-hmm. That's my worry for the Bulldogs, is where does this trade period sit them for 25?
They'll do it. That will end us up, Jesse. We got there just sub hour. We aimed for half an hour. Here we are half an hour later. That's fine. We talk footy. Tonight you talked footy. You talked a lot of footy. Thank you for that.
I did.
I appreciate you.
I can't wait to go on my run listening to this podcast, just hearing myself the whole time. Can you put in some wacky sound effects during the edit? So I'm like maybe like a car horn, just to really keep me on my toes.
Yeah, I can do that. I can definitely do that. Jesse, bring us home.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the Centimetre Perfect AFL podcast. Make sure you're liking, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, telling your friends, telling your neighbours, going to the new residential addresses of the players in your state and telling them to listen. Don't care that that's weird. Find their address and tell them to listen to the Centimetre Perfect AFL podcast. I think for legal reasons, I have to say that part's a joke. But if you just happen to be their neighbour, just tap on Tom Barrass's window in Glen Ferry or Box Hill and say, "Hi, Tom. I listened to this really good podcast. They talked about West Coast not getting a fair deal for you. Welcome to Hawthorn, I guess."
Perfect. That's it. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks.
We'll see you around. Bye now.